Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
I don't know how many of you realize this, but we are in the midst of a streaming trend that oftentimes offers these original series that are composed of mostly filler and one or two good episodes. That's the formula. We see it with Disney Plus, we see it with Netflix. Hell, I even saw it with The Walking Dead before I stopped watching that show.
That's right, it stinks!
I do understand the concept of unraveling or developing a story gradually, but the way that they've been doing it in these streaming series feels not structurally sound. It results in shows like Moon Knight that feels like it has a lot of nothing going on for a large chunk of time, and then they just dump all this information on you in one or two episodes. It's just not narratively pleasing, and I'll take it a step further and say that I believe the TV series format is actually hurting these stories.
No shit.
In a movie, you have 2 or 2.5 hours to tell your story and then wrap everything up. But it's starting to feel like when they take these stories and turn them into streaming series, it feels like they have too much time on their hands, and thus we get a lot of excess that we don't really need. In Moon Knight's case, it's been a lot of cringe, or a lot of random shit that feels unnecessary, or just makes no fucking sense at all. Episode 5 was the first time in this entire series that it felt like they were actually trying to say something relevant. This was the first time that Mark and Steven didn't feel like a punchline throughout the entire episode.
Jesus fucking Christ, it's about time!
And I asked the question, why exactly couldn't they bring a fraction of this energy to the entire show? It's only 6 episodes long, that's not as much time as you think, so why all the fucking around? Not to mention we've barely seen Moon Knight in a Moon Knight series, which seems like a weird creative choice to me, but at the very least this episode took the characters a bit more seriously for the very first time. And as a result, we got the best episode so far. Now that's not saying a whole lot with this show.
Why?
Because if you're looking at the totality of it, one episode does not make the entire series. And I still strongly believe that they have not done the character justice in any way. Episode 5 deals with Mark and Steven trying to find balance in their soul in the afterlife. And that involves revealing secrets between them that they've been keeping inside of them for too long. So the basic goal was to flesh this character out. Why it took 5 episodes to start doing that, I have no idea.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
So a chunk of this episode involves Mark and Steven reliving past memories from their life, all in an effort to uncover the truth about them. And the biggest revelation comes in the form of Mark as a child experiencing a great deal of trauma. It's revealed that he had a younger brother who died in a cave drowning accident. And Mark's mother blamed him for the accident and even resorted to physically abusing him because of it.
No more hangers!
This is why Mark created Steven in the first place, to deal with this trauma. It was a way for him to escape, and he manifested it through a childhood hero that he had a poster of on his wall. Now all of this raises some questions as it pertains to what we've seen so far in regards to how Mark and Steven have been switching back and forth and taking control of the body. Mainly because narratively, Mark has been the one to deal with all the conflict up until this point. And based on Steven's origin, it would seem that Mark wouldn't be able to handle these situations as easily as we've seen him do it.
That makes sense.
I guess the emotional trauma from his mother is in a different part of the brain than the conflict that he's been facing throughout this show. But it feels like if you dig a little deeper, there are inconsistencies there as it pertains to when Mark takes over and when Steven takes over. When it comes right down to it, it's revealed that Mark and Steven basically lived very different lives. Steven basically missed out on all the horrific events that Mark experienced. Steven even remembers things from their past differently than Mark does. Steven believes that their mother is still alive, to which he later comes to the conclusion that she is not. Basically, Steven's whole life was a lie.
Fuck me, right?
Mark, on the other hand, was deeply impacted by all of this, and understandably so. And in his ultimate moment of weakness where he contemplates suicide, that's when Khonshu approaches him and offers him the chance to be Moon Knight. And yes, this is where we see the first donning of the horrific CGI Moon Knight suit.
What the hell am I looking at?
By the end of the episode, Mark and Steven are fighting off the souls of all of the people that Mark has murdered as a mercenary. And the souls are basically trying to drag them down to the underworld. And this is the first time that we see Steven discover this strength in him, and he basically mans up, but it ultimately ends up in him falling into the sand. So for all intents and purposes, it looks like Mark is now without Steven, and he's on his own.
Why do you cry?
This kind of goes back to what I said last week about Marvel's new infatuation with having their heroes basically finding themselves. Because that's essentially what we're getting here with Moon Knight as well. This entire afterlife sequence was by far the most interesting thing they did in the entire show. The only issue is that up until this point, it's been surrounded by complete and utter shit. One of my channel members, Raya, tweeted recently that she watched both Moon Knight and The Northman pretty close together. And Ethan Hawke is in both of those stories, and she felt like Ethan Hawke was phoning his performance in Moon Knight.
Put some effort into it!
And honestly, I couldn't agree more. And that's really the problem with this show. A lot of it feels very second-rate. From the uneven storytelling to the poor CGI to the pretty uninteresting characters. And we'll even throw in the lack of regard for the source material. When it comes right down to it, there's a lot to dislike about this show. I remember watching WandaVision, and like Moon Knight, I was pretty uninterested in most of it. But I do remember enjoying a later episode in that series as well. So apparently this is the formula.
Because it's all part of the plan.
That's why I have no confidence that they can actually follow this up. I have no doubt in my mind that they will revert back to typical MCU bullshit. Why, when they could be doing a deeper character study like they attempted to do in this episode? I still, for the life of me, can't figure out why they chose to go in this direction. A much better story is literally sitting there and staring them in the face, and that's what's so frustrating about all of this. And that's why it's even more frustrating that they had to add this whole Steven element for comedic effect.
Had you ever heard of the healing power of laughter?
The MCU is always teasing wanting to do something a bit different, but it's like they get scared and then by the end of it just revert back to what works for them. I would venture to say that a show strictly about Steven's past, where we explore his trauma, and he eventually becomes Moon Knight and a dark and brooding figure, would have been a breath of fresh air in the MCU. Instead, we got this goofy show with one decent episode. My advice would be to stop being afraid to do something different. Because if you did do something different, it would make your stories infinitely more rewatchable. Which, in my opinion, they are not at this point in time. So have you seen Moon Knight Episode 5? If you have, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Y'all be cool. Right on.